In this video, I'll reveal the secret tips for perfect running form that Eliud Kipchoge used to become the marathon GOAT. But it was at the Boston Marathon in 2023 that we learned that this running form may be his biggest downfall. Let me explain. Now, before we get into what actually went wrong, let's talk about the 4 things about Eliud's running form that makes him the marathon GOAT. The most obvious thing for me is symmetry, because Eliud is the most symmetrical runner I've ever seen. And in the 2022 Berlin Marathon, where he would set a new world record, we can see that even at 40 kilometers into the race, both sides of his body look absolutely identical. So let's start from the top. His head remains completely straight, and even though his shoulders are swaying from side to side, his head and his neck stay completely relaxed and fluid with his running. And we can also see that his arms are tucked up into his body in an extremely relaxed position, with that classic Eliud hand position with the thumbs up towards the sky, like this. We can also see that his hips are level and stable and don't drop on either side when he's running. His knees are also directly under his hips, and the way that both feet land on the ground are pretty much identical. And if we compare his running form to mine, we can see that I have some major asymmetries, particularly with my right arm and my right shoulder. And it really looks like I've got to work on my foot strike, because Eliud's foot strike is the next thing on this list that makes him so fast. And that's because his foot strike style is exactly what the foot is supposed to do during a gait cycle. Eliud lands on the outer edge of his 5th metatarsal, basically his pinky toe, and rolls across into his 1st metatarsal or his big toe to store all of that energy into the soft tissue of the foot to spring himself off the ground. And to understand the reason why this is exactly what the foot is supposed to do when we're running, we have to get into a little bit of anatomy. Your foot has a lot of bones, 26 to be precise, and all of these bones articulate together to make 2 specific movements: supination and pronation. When Eliud initially makes contact with the ground, his foot is fully supinated, but as he puts more weight into that foot, it transitions into a fully pronated position. And this puts all of the soft tissue structures on the bottom of your foot into energy storage mode. And we call this ability to store all of this energy in the foot the Windlass Mechanism. All of this stored energy is used to push that foot back into pronation. But more specifically, it's used to power that big toe off the ground to get that world record toe off. Let's compare Eliud to Shiro Katada at the 2022 London Marathon, where we can clearly see in this shot both different foot strike patterns from both athletes. Katada lands on his heel and doesn't wind up his Windlass Mechanism on the bottom of his foot until the very end of his gait cycle when he's about to push off. And this for sure is costing him some running economy compared to Eliud, because we can see that Eliud lands directly on that midfoot and winds up that Windlass Mechanism straight away. And this energy storage capacity of the foot really helps for this next tip that I've found in Eliud's running form. There is one important thing that separates you from elite athletes like Eliud, and it's what's allowing them to be so economical with each step. That thing is leg stiffness. Let me explain. Have you ever wondered why elites can run so fast and make it look so effortless? Well, simply put, it's because they're not spending as much time on the ground as you or me. This study from South Africa compared elite athletes to regular recreational runners to find out why elite athletes were so fast and economical. And what they found was this leg stiffness, or ability to hit the ground and get back off as quick as possible, was highly correlated to faster race times. And they called this theory the mass spring mechanism, which is such a cool name. Because the elite athletes are way stiffer and springier than us normal mere mortal runners. And so this means that they get more out of each step and they're able to conserve way more energy. Simply put, when you're in the air and your legs aren't touching the ground, you're maintaining your speed. And it's only when you put your foot on the ground that you open yourself up to the potential of losing speed. So Eliud is insanely fast because he has a much better mass spring system, which basically means a stiffer leg, but also because he spends much less time on the ground than a non-elite athlete. This time on the ground is sometimes referred to as ground contact time. So for educational sake only, let's compare Eliud's ground contact time compared to mine. And wow, using YouTube footage, this took so long to actually decipher. At marathonish pace, I clocked an average ground contact time of 210 milliseconds, which ain't too bad, I guess. But I measured Eliud's ground contact time at 180 milliseconds at his marathon pace, which is 252 per kilometer. Insane. And keep in mind that Eliud is probably 10 plus kilos lighter than I am, which means that he's not only spending way less time on the ground, he's also got way less weight to actually push off with each step. So his power to weight ratio is just gonna be sky high. And maybe that gives me some hope that if I lost 11 kilos, maybe I'll be able to run 159. I'm joking. Even if I was 60 kilos, I'd be nowhere near this. So this last thing that Eliud does is the icing on the cake for having excellent symmetry, great foot strike mechanics, and great leg stiffness. And that thing is vertical oscillation. And this is a characteristic that sticks out so clearly when looking at Eliud, because he looks like a bouncing little rabbit for 42 kilometers straight. But to understand this more, let's bring up that video again of Eliud and Katada. So here we can see that once again, Katada lands on his heel like we talked about earlier. But what is also interesting is that he's barely moving vertically with each step. And since the hamstring muscles and the hip muscles are primarily a hip extender, he's probably moving more horizontally than vertically. And comparing this to Eliud, we can actually see that he's probably more at the 45-degree angle of hip push-off, and he has way more vertical oscillation. Eliud really relies on his foot spring mechanism, his calf musculature, and most importantly for this video, his quads. Because Eliud is getting most of his propulsion from plantar flexion or extension of the ankle, as well as extension of the knee. And due to his forward lean, that extension pushes him along the road. And if we compare that to myself, I'm also a quad dominant runner, just like Eliud. Pretty interesting, right? So this is the difference between quad dominant runners and hip dominant runners, and why running styles vary so much. I hope you're keeping notes, guys. Please comment below if there's anything that you've picked out yourself from Eliud's running form that I haven't mentioned in this video so far. I'd love to hear what you have. Now, I think this quad dominance is a clue into what actually went wrong in Boston. So let's explore that. So here's a recap if you haven't seen. In Boston 2023, this was meant to be another world marathon major win for Eliud, after just recently breaking his own world record in Berlin. But it seemed that just after the halfway mark, after a big surge in the lead group, Eliud dropped off the back of the pack and was nowhere to be seen for the rest of the race, which pretty much shocked everyone. And Eliud crossed the line in 6th place with a 2:09.23, which in Boston is still a really fast time. But what went wrong here? Now, there was some speculation that his nutrition didn't go to plan, as there was footage of him missing a water bottle. But I'll be honest, I'm not quite convinced of that theory because of the stuff that we're about to get into. And from the main man himself in the press conference after, he said that he wasn't able to lift his leg. Don't know what that means. And that he put his mind just to run a comfortable pace to finish. That does not sound good, does it? And if we look at these videos, we can really see that his ground contact time and his leg lift is way less on the left compared to the right. But it also seems like he's shifted his whole body to preserve energy and take some weight off that leg. But what would cause this? Well, as we mentioned earlier, Eliud has that bouncy running style, and he really relies on his calf musculature as well as his quads to give him that bouncy running style. And it's interesting because the quads actually attach above the hip, which means that they can actually flex the hip or lift the leg. So here's my tinfoil hat theory. I think he was paid off by Big Kenya and Kelvin Kipton to throw the race. That must be it. Or he picked up a quad injury and it forced him to completely change his gait pattern to accommodate for this injury. And the result of this was that he wasn't able to run in the same way that he normally is able to. I think I've got it. But wait, let's have a look at his 5K splits again. He didn't actually get any slower. That's pretty interesting. But here is where it gets a whole lot more interesting, because he had the same issue in Berlin when he broke the world record. Have a look. At the 32K mark here in Berlin, I can see that his left leg is very similar in that lack of lift compared to the right. And it's shifted his whole body off, just like in Boston. But as I mentioned earlier in the video, by the 40K mark, he regained all of his symmetry in his running and he was back to running at world record pace. It's pretty tricky. But once again, he's still very fast and he cruised home to a new world record. So here's what I think. As symmetrical as Eliud is, I think his left side is weaker than his right, and it leaves him open to form breakdown and maybe even injury. And when I discovered this, I looked back through a lot of his races and I can't seem to find any other clues that suggest that this has been a long-term issue. So it seems like this maybe happened in Berlin and it just wasn't quite fixed by Boston. And I also think that his bouncy running style puts a lot more strain on his quads, and maybe that's actually his weakest link. But it's not as simple as that, because he broke the world record in Berlin with the same issue. So I think there's one more thing going on here that's allowing him to keep running at world record pace. Eliud is the marathon goat, and after 20 years of running at the elite level, he's clearly learned a couple of tricks or two that he's not told anyone about. And the biggest lesson that I learned from watching this Boston race is that Eliud is able to drag himself back to symmetry to continue to propel himself forward, even when something is going really wrong. Because his years of running experience and dedication to the craft has made him mentally unbreakable. He's basically like a martial artist who just knows all different kinds of kung fu. He has a strong mind and finds a way to keep moving forward without giving up. And that's why he's the marathon goat. So here is the last lesson of the video, and it's about how I'm learning how to regulate my running form just like Eliud. So here's my 4-step process on how to do it. Step 1 is identifying my own baseline running form, where I take videos of myself and identify asymmetries or particular characteristics about the way that I run. Then step 2 is to get out running and do a big old interval session. And once again, take videos of yourself and note any differences between your baseline and what you're like when you're fatigued. Now, step 3 is something that you can continually work on throughout your running journey. And that is to understand what particular asymmetries start to feel like as you get more fatigued. And that's a very important one, because we're not always gonna have a video to show ourselves. We're gonna have to learn how to feel that. And step 4 is developing strategies to help yourself be able to counteract those form breakdowns. This can be in the form of cues that you can remind yourself whilst you're running to get ahead of the problem, but it could also be improving strengths and weaknesses in your own running style and also improving your range of motion. Now, if you're interested in running form just as much as me, then you're gonna have to watch this next video on the 1500 meter goat, Jakob Ingebrigtsen. So go watch it. Click it. Go on.